Welcome back to our channel. In this video, we're going to discuss about biogeochemical cycles. So let's learn. Biogeochemical cycle. The living world depends upon the energy flow and the nutrient circulation that occur through the ecosystem. Both influence the abundance of organisms, the metabolic rate at which they live, and the complexity of the ecosystem. Energy flow through ecosystem enable the organism to perform various kind of work, and this energy is ultimately lost as heat forever in terms of the usefulness of the system. On the other hand, nutrient of food matter never get used up. They can be recycled again and again indefinitely. For example, when we breathe, we may be inhale several million atoms of element that may have been inhaled by our ancestor or other organisms. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and phosphorus as a element and compound make up to 97% of the mass of our body, and are more than 95% of mass of our living organisms. In addition to those, about 15 to 25 other elements are needed in some form of survival, the good health of the plant and animal. Those element or mineral nutrient are always in circulating movement for non-living to the living and then back to the non-living compound of the ecosystem in a more or less circular fashion. This circular fashion is known as biochemical cycle. Nutrient cycle. The nutrient cycle is a concept that describes how nutrients move from the physical environment to the living organism and subsequently recycle back to the physical environment. This movement of nutrients from the environment into the plant and animal and again back to the environment is essential for their life and its vital function of the ecological of any region. In a particular environment, to maintain its organism in a sustained manner, the nutrient cycle must be kept balanced and stable. Nutrient cycle is typically studied in terms of specific nutrient, with each nutrient in an environment having its own particular pattern of cycling. Among the most important nutrient cycle are the carbon nutrient cycle, the nitrogen nutrient cycle. Both of those cycles make up the essential part of the overall soil nutrient cycle. Those are other nutrient cycles that are important in ecology, including a large number of trace mineral nutrient cycle. Gaseous cycle. Let us first study some of the most important gaseous cycle. First one, water cycle. Second one, carbon cycle. And the third one, nitrogen cycle. The water cycle. The water cycle is continuous circulation of water in the Earth atmosphere system, which is driven by solar energy. Water in our planet is stored in a major reservoir like atmosphere, ocean, lake, river, soil, glacier, snowfield, and groundwater. Water moves from one reservoir to another reservoir by the process of evaporation, transportation, conduction, precipitation, deposition, runoff, etc. The carbon cycle. Carbon is presently in the atmosphere mainly in form of carbon dioxide. Carbon cycle involves a continuous exchange of carbon between the atmosphere and organism. Carbon from the atmosphere moves to a green plant by the process of photosynthesis and then to animal by the process of respiration and decomposition of dead organism matter. It returns back to the atmosphere. It usually a short-term cycle. Some carbon also enter into long-term cycle. It accumulate an undecomposed organic matter into the pretty layer of marshy soil or as insoluble carbon in bottom of sedimentary of aqua system, which take long time to be released. In deep oceans, such carbon can be remain buried for a million of years till geological movement may lift those rocks above the sea level. Those rocks may be exposed to erosion, release their carbon dioxide, carbonate, and bicarbonate into the stream and rivers. Fossil fuels such as coal, oil, and natural gas, etc., are organic compounds that were buried before they could be decomposed and were subsequently transformed by the time and geological process into the fossil fuel. When they are buried, the carbon stored in the release back to the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. The nitrogen cycle. Nitrogen is essential constituent of protein and its basic building block of all living tissue. It constitutes nearly 16% by weight of all protein. There is an inexhaustible supply of nitrogen in the atmosphere, but the element from cannot be used directly by the most of the living organisms. Nitrogen need to be fixed, that is converted to ammonia, nitrous, nitrates before it can be taken up by plant. Nitrogen fixation on Earth is accomplished in three different ways: by microorganisms, by man using industrial process, to a limit extent by atmospheric phenomena such as thunder and lightning. Certain microorganisms are capable of fixing atmospheric nitrogen into ammonium ion, those including free-living nitrified bacteria, and symbiotic nitrifying bacteria living in the associate with the leguminous plant, and symbiotic bacteria living in the non-leguminous root nodal plant, as well as blue-green algae. Ammonium ion can be directly taken up as a source of nitrogen by some plant or oxidized to a nitrite or nitrates by two groups of specialized bacteria. Nitromorous bacteria promote transformation of ammonia into nitrite. Nitrite is further transferred into nitrate by the bacteria called Nitrobacter. The nitrate synthesis by bacteria in the soil are taken up by plant and converted into amino acid, which are the building block of protein. Those then go through the high trophic level of the ecosystem during the excretion, and upon the death of organism, nitrogen is returned to the soil in form of ammonia. Certain quantity of soil nitrate, being highly soluble in water, is lost to the system, being transported away by the surface runoff or groundwater. In the soil as well as ocean, there are specially nitrified bacteria which convert nitrates or nitrites to element of nitrogen. This nitrogen escape into the atmosphere, thus the complete the cycle. The periodic thunderstorm convert the gaseous nitrogen into the atmosphere to the ammonia and nitrates, which eventually reach the earth's surface through the precipitation and then into the soil to be utilized by plants. Sedimentary cycle. Phosphorus, calcium and magnesium circulate by means of the sedimentary cycle. The element involved in sedimentary cycle normally does not cycle through the atmosphere but follow a basic pattern of flow through the erosion, sedimentation, mountain building, volcanic activity and biochemical transportation through the excrete of marine bird. Phosphorus cycle. Phosphorus play a central role in aquatic ecosystem and water quality. Unlike carbon and nitrogen, which come primarily from the atmosphere, phosphorus occur in large amount as the mineral in phosphate rock and enter the cycle from erosion and mining activity. This is the nutrient considered to be the main cause of excessive growth of root and free-floating microscopic plant in lake. The main storage of phosphorus in the earth crust. On the land, phosphorus is usually found in the form of phosphate. By the process of weathering and erosion, phosphate enter the river and streams that transport them to the ocean. In the ocean, once the phosphorus accumulates on the continental slab in the form of insoluble deposit, after millions of years, the crustal plate rises from the sea floor and exposes the phosphates on land. After more time, weathering will release them from the rock and the cycle geochemical phase begin again. Sulfur cycle. The sulfur reservoir is in the soil and sediment where it locks in organic, inorganic deposits in form of sulfate, sulfide and organic sulfur. It is released by weathering of rock, erosional runoff and decomposition of organic matter and is carried to a terrestrial and aquatic ecosystem in salt solution. The sulfur cycle is mostly sedimentary except two of its compounds, hydrogen sulfide and sulfur dioxide, added a gaseous compound to its normal sedimentary cycle. Sulfur entered to the atmosphere from the several sources like volcanic eruption, combustion of fossil fuel and surface of the ocean, and from gases released by decomposition atmospheric hydrogen sulfide and also get oxidized into the sulfur dioxide. Atmospheric sulfur dioxide is carried back to the earth after being dissolved in the rainwater as a weak sulfuric acid. Whatever the sources, sulfur in the form of sulfates is taken up by plant and incorporated through a series of metabolic processes into sulfur-bearing amino acid, which is incorporated with the protein of autotrophs tissue. It then passes through the grazing food chain. Sulfur bounded in the living organism is carried back to the soil, to the bottom of pond and lake and seas through the excretion and decomposition of dead organic material. The biogeochemical cycles discussed here are only few of the many cycles present in the ecosystem. Those cycles usually do not operate independently but interact with each other at some point or the other. So this is the end of the video. I hope you like the concept of biogeochemical cycles. Scan the above QR code to get the note of this video. Thank you.